Welcome to Plato's Allegory of the Cave from the Republic. Just want to remind you that I'm not doing this to necessarily continue Plato's idea of the Allegory of the Cave, which we will get into a little bit. Part of the reason I'm doing this is so that we can introduce you to this concept of universal symbols. I'm not going to go over the terms on this screen, but feel free to pause if you need to copy these down for class. What I'm going to spend my time on is actually telling the story of the Allegory of the Cave. As you see here, we have a cave. And in this cave are a number of prisoners, and they have been chained here since birth. Behind them, behind a low wall, is a fire. That fire is projecting shadows onto the wall. Those shadows are decided by the puppeteers who carry various objects, and those objects are projected onto the wall in the form of shadows. The prisoners have been in this position their entire lives. They have never been able to look left or right. Their only impression of the world is from what they see on the shadows. They are able to hear the puppeteer, and so they've been able to form language. But again, they're getting the language as it is reflected off of the wall. Now, as the allegory continues, one of the puppeteers comes down. We're going to call him the puppet master. And the puppet master frees one of the prisoners. The prisoner is not happy about this. First of all, he's never had somebody come up to him and say, "Hey, dude, let's, talk a little bit." He's only ever talked to his prisoners, and he's never actually seen another human being before. So he's shocked, he's startled, he doesn't know what to do. The puppet master compels him to turn around. And as I said in class, compels is a very important word here. It carries the connotation of giving him no other choice but to do so. And maybe he compels him from an internal perspective, gives him some sort of internal reason to want to do this, or he might in some way kind of force him to turn around. The prisoner is not happy with what he sees. Everything looks foreign and strange to him. After all, his only view of the world has been through those shadows, and now he's looking at real objects. He has the bright light of the fire. He's blinded by what he sees. It's overwhelming, and all he wants to do is return back to his place in the chains. However, the puppet master says, "Nope, you have to leave the cave." And of course, our prisoner does not want to leave the cave. He wants to stay where he is most comfortable, but the puppet master says, "Nope, you have to leave." And so he has drug up the rough ascent to sunlight. And he comes out into the sun, and the sun blinds him. He's not able to see anything. He can't concentrate. He can't focus. It's simply too much light all at one time. So the first time he's actually able to see anything clearly is during the moonlight, because this represents, or resembles, something very similar to what he was used to when he was in the cave. For the first time, he is able to start actually seeing real forms, but he can only partially understand them because in the light of the moon, these objects are still somewhat indistinct. They have form, maybe three-dimensional, but their color is dulled under the light of the moon, and he can't quite see everything clearly. But it's at least somewhat comfortable to him because it's more like what it was in the shadows. The next thing that he's able to see is the next day underneath the light of the sun, which is again still way too bright for him. He's able to see objects in the lake, but again, they're somewhat distorted. They're wavy because of the water. They have a lot more color, but now they don't have dimension. And after a while, he's able to actually see everything in the direct light of the sun. Now he's finally able to make out the true form. Ultimately, he's able to look right at the sun, and this is when he's come to a full realization of what he sees in the outside world. He might even become happy there. He becomes, excited and interested and wants to go seek out more. Unfortunately, he is compelled to return to the cave. Now, whether he's compelled from someone else or whether his own internal desire compels him back into the cave is beside the point. He's forced back into his position as a prisoner, and he tries to share his knowledge of the outside world with his old friends. But his old friends reject him. They tell him that under no circumstances can they accept this story. It's fantastic. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. All that is true to them is the shadows on the cave. And so our prisoner is struggling to get them to understand. Ultimately, they say, they become angry, and they tell him that he has been ruined by the people that came and took him out of the cave, and that if anyone were to try to take them out of the cave, they would rather kill that person than be drug out of the cave themselves. So, what is the point of all this? Plato argues that we all start out life in a cave. We begin by looking around us and being told what to believe, what to see. Think about when you were a small child and you asked lots of questions. The answers were given to you by your parents, by your pastor, by your family members, by other people that you trusted and loved. Information was doled out to you when your parents felt it was necessary for you to learn those things. And Plato says that's the way it should be. We should learn information that is age appropriate. In his particular time, most people would never have gotten beyond that particular level of understanding. But Plato says there are a select few, the elite, who will be forced to face a much deeper truth. They will be forced to examine what they believe and what they know. And that is ultimately the encouragement of all educational philosophy. This is really about the transition from ignorance to truth. And you need to remember that in this particular case, we are not talking about something that's necessarily untrue. You can have your beliefs reaffirmed by examining them. And so Plato says the truly enlightened person is going to completely and totally understand those truths for himself and not just believe them because somebody else told them to. So that's Plato's purpose. I have a secondary purpose. My secondary purpose is to talk a great deal about the universal meaning of symbols. Everything that this allegory is based on is symbolic. Every action, every person, every object, everything within the allegory symbolizes a larger concept in the larger world. Okay? So I'm not going to spend time talking to you through the rest of these screens. I'm going to let them play for a moment or two. Feel free to stop it anywhere along the way that you need to in order to copy down information or to pause it and understand what the screens are saying. All of the information is there for you that we went over in class, including some of my favorite changes and additions for this year, which you will see along the way.